Every adversity, every failure, every heartbreak carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Have you ever seen a woman at a cafe, alone with a book, unbothered by the world, radiating the kind of peace that can't be faked? You might assume she's waiting for someone, but what if she is the someone? This isn't a woman in waiting. This is a woman in becoming. She's not searching for a missing piece. She's building an empire, one peaceful moment at a time. She didn't choose solitude out of scarcity, but out of strategy. While the world plays checkers, she's playing chess, and she's several moves ahead. If that resonates even a little bit, pause for a second, press the like button, and hit subscribe, because we're about to dive into the truth society doesn't want you to hear about women who live alone and love it. Think of her like a volcano. From the outside, still, quiet, even soft. But inside, pressure, power, and molten transformation. Or imagine her as the seed underground, forgotten, underestimated, but silently cracking open into something unstoppable. Real-life women like J.K. Rowling, Oprah, and Frida Kahlo all spent chapters of their lives walking solo, turning heartbreak into fuel and silence into symphony. And here's the magic: she's not rejecting love, she's redefining it. She's not broken, she's blueprinting. As Napoleon Hill would say, desire backed by faith knows no such word as impossible. And what she desires is not a savior, but a mirror, someone who reflects her strength, not requires her surrender. So before we jump into this journey, here's your fun task. Comment alone, alive, abundant below. Show the algorithm, the universe, and most importantly yourself, that solitude is not a setback, it's your superpower. Because what's coming next isn't just insight, it's ignition. Let's turn your silence into strategy. Number 1, the power of purpose. Over-approval. Definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement. Let's be real. Most women who choose this path, the path of solitude, silence, and fierce self-respect, don't just wake up one day craving independence. No, this path is earned. It's built brick by brick, through tears on the pillow at 2 a.m., through conversations that drained more than they gave, through being ghosted after opening up, and through loving people who didn't know how to hold them without hurting them. You didn't choose this path out of ease. You chose it after being tired of begging to be seen. After being told you're too emotional when all you wanted was honesty. After dimming your light just to keep someone else comfortable in their shadows. And when the world said, "What's wrong with you?" you started asking, "What's right with me that they couldn't handle?" See, a woman doesn't become powerful by chance. She becomes powerful by surviving every situation that tried to convince her she wasn't. That's what Napoleon Hill meant when he said, "Purpose is the beginning of everything." Because at some point you got tired of trying to win a game where the rules were rigged. You stopped performing for love. You started listening to that quiet voice inside, the one that didn't want applause, just alignment. You didn't always want to be alone. You once believed in fairy tales. You wore your heart on your sleeve. But somewhere between broken promises and breadcrumb texts, you realized you were writing a bestseller, but handing it to people who only skimmed the first page. So now, instead of begging to be understood, you choose to understand yourself. You built this solitude not as a wall, but as a workshop. You are not hiding, you're honing. Napoleon Hill also said, "A quitter never wins, and a winner never quits." And girl, if you're here now, you already know you didn't quit on love. You quit on settling. And that makes you the winner of a game most people never even realize they're playing. You're not too independent, that label was made up by people who benefit from your confusion. You're just done shrinking into spaces you were never meant to fit in. You've learned that someone else's comfort is not your contract. That clarity is more attractive than charm. That peace is more powerful than validation. Think of it like this. Life used to be a noisy party you kept trying to enjoy, even though the music didn't feel right. Now you've walked out, sat under the stars, and realized the silence was the real song all along. Women like you, yes, you, have lived through nights of questioning your worth, wondering if you're too much or not enough, but here you are. And that tells me one thing: your purpose spoke louder than your pain. So now let's do this together. Pause and comment. Purpose over pressure. Not because it's trendy, but because it's true. This is your declaration to the algorithm, to the universe, and most importantly, to yourself. And hold tight, because in the next chapter, we're about to unlock one of Napoleon Hill's most powerful secrets: how women like you take desire, yes, even the wild, romantic, messy kind, and transmute it into unstoppable personal power. You've cried. Now let's rise. You've been broken. Now let's build. The journey has only just begun. Number 2, desire transmuted into power. These women didn't start out powerful. They started out loving too hard, hoping too deeply, and often hurting too silently. They once sent long messages that were left on read. They cried quietly in bathrooms after smiling through dinners. They waited for texts that never came, for apologies that never arrived, for love that was never ready. But through every sleepless night, every cold silence, something inside them began to stir. That ache, the one they thought was weakness, was actually desire. Not just romantic desire, but soul-deep longing for a life that felt aligned, honest, rich with meaning. The problem was never that they wanted too much, it was that they kept offering their fire to people who only brought smoke. And then something shifted. They stopped seeing heartbreak as a punishment and started using it as a refining fire. That's when they began to transmute. No longer suppressing their emotional energy, they channeled it into art, into movement, into mission. Napoleon Hill taught that desire alone is not enough. It must be definite, and it must be backed by faith. And that's exactly what these women learned. Their desire became focused, and their faith was no longer in other people, it was in themselves. They didn't numb the pain, they recycled it, like turning heartbreak into poetry, rejection into redirection, loneliness into legacy. This is transmutation, the sacred act of taking emotional intensity and turning it into creative force, vision, and emotional wealth. These women aren't too sensitive, they are high capacity. They don't cry because they're fragile, they cry because they feel, and that ability to feel deeply has become their greatest compass. It tells them what's real and what's not. It saves them from shallow waters and pushes them into purpose. Think of them as emotional alchemists. They've taken every not enough, every too much, and turned it into fuel, into clarity, into firepower. The very desire that once made them feel helpless is now the engine of their empire. Napoleon Hill also said, "Faith is the only known antidote for failure." And these women, after being let down time and again, learned that the only real failure was losing faith in their own worth. And once they reclaimed that faith, everything changed. They no longer seek love to be rescued, they seek love that reflects the richness they've built alone. Their solitude isn't cold, it's charged, with vision, with depth, with unshakable certainty. Let the world misunderstand them. Let others call them intense, dramatic, distant. These women know the truth. Their desire is not desperate. It's divine. And they no longer pour it into cracked containers. Their heartbreaks didn't end them. They ignited them. They now live in a state of quiet revolution, transforming every ounce of pain into personal power. So, for those watching this journey unfold, here's a bold declaration to type into the comments. Fuel, don't fold. Say it not for attention, but as an echo of the fire within. And just wait, because in the next section, we're diving even deeper. These women have mastered their desires, yes, but the real power comes next. How they've taken control of the one battlefield most people fear the most, their own minds. Number 3, mastering the inner world first. For these women, solitude didn't begin as a sanctuary. It began as a storm. In the early days, the silence was deafening. Every quiet night echoed with old words, "You're too much. Why can't you be more easygoing?" Phrases that stuck like burrs in the mind. There were nights filled with replaying arguments, dissecting text messages, questioning their worth, and wondering why love always seemed to ask them to shrink. But eventually, the storm gave way to stillness. And in that stillness, they faced the most difficult person to confront: themselves. This is where most people turn back. They distract, they numb, they fill the void with noise, another situationship, another scroll through someone else's highlight reel. But not these women. They stayed, they sat with their fears, they listened to the voices in their head, then challenged them. They asked, "Is that belief even mine, or did I inherit it? Who told me love should hurt? Who said being alone means being unwanted?" And little by little, thought by thought, they began to reclaim the space inside their minds. Napoleon Hill understood this when he said, "You become what you think about." These women began to think differently. No longer driven by scarcity, panic, or the fear of ending up alone, they started to train their minds like elite athletes. Emotional discipline became their edge. They stopped spiraling, they started selecting. Every thought was a choice, and every choice was a seed. They stopped reacting to disrespect. They responded with distance. They stopped obsessing over being liked. They focused on being aligned. Their solitude became more than peace. It became practice. Think of it like this: a garden left unattended grows weeds. But these women began pulling the weeds, limiting beliefs, outdated stories, emotional clutter, and planting new truths. That they are worthy. That love isn't meant to cost their identity. That they are not behind in life because they're single. They are ahead because they are whole. This isn't toxic positivity. These women still have bad days. Doubt creeps in. Old wounds whisper. But now they have the tools to navigate the storms without being destroyed by them. They don't just journal, they reprogram. They don't just meditate, they reset. They don't wait for the world to validate them. They validate themselves daily, internally, on repeat. They've realized that the real war was never between them and someone else. It was between their soul and the conditioning that told them they had to settle. And they chose their soul. Napoleon Hill said, "The mind is the master power that molds and makes." These women took the master key back. They rewired their reality. Now their energy isn't erratic, it's magnetic. Their presence doesn't beg, it commands, and not from a place of arrogance, but from a calm that only comes from having faced the hardest truths and survived. So if you're witnessing this, take a moment to type "Calm is my power" in the comments. Not because they need to shout, but because they've learned silence can roar. And just when you think they've reached their peak, wait until you see what's next. These women aren't isolated, they're strategic. Next, we uncover how even in solitude, they're never truly alone. They've mastered something even more powerful than independence, the invisible force of aligned community. Stay with me. The mastermind chapter is about to begin. Number 4. Persistence, the silent strength. Imagine a woman planting a garden on a mountaintop where no one can see her. Each morning, she wakes before the sun, waters the soil, pulls the weeds, tends to the roots. No fanfare, no applause. Just the quiet, stubborn act of believing something beautiful will bloom, even if no one's watching yet. This is the essence of persistence. This is how these women move through the world. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Patience, persistence, and perspiration make an unbeatable combination for success." These women embody that truth, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way they've survived the storms that life and love have thrown at them. They weren't born persistent. They were born hopeful, wide-eyed, trusting, open-hearted. But after being let down again and again, they were forced to become something stronger. Not bitter, not closed off, just clear. Because they've known what it's like to keep giving chances to someone who only offered confusion. They've felt the pain of investing in potential instead of presence. And maybe worst of all, they've been there, sitting across from someone they loved deeply, realizing that love wasn't being reflected back. They could have settled. And for a time, many of them did. But every almost relationship, every situationship, every emotional breadcrumb helped build a truth inside them. You don't get the life you want by folding, you build it, one boundary at a time. So while others rush into validation, into noise, into quick-fix affection, these women wait, they build, they refine, they don't beg to be chosen, they choose themselves again and again. Every no they give is not rejection, it's redirection. It's saying, I've worked too hard on myself to give away my peace for chemistry that lacks commitment. They've learned to say no to half-love because they finally understand the cost of betraying themselves. They've sat in silence, yes, but not the silence of abandonment, the silence of strategy. Like a sculptor shaping stone, they chip away everything that doesn't align. They say no to the lukewarm, to the vague, to the energy that feels like old cycles in new clothing. Their no is not a wall, it's a mirror that reflects their new standard. Napoleon Hill reminds us that persistence isn't just about grit, it's about holding the vision when the world hands you distractions. And these women hold it like a sacred flame. They know the love they're building space for requires endurance, not excuses. It requires preparation, not just passion. And so they stay the course, quietly, steadily, refusing to rush, refusing to repeat, refusing to betray what they now know about themselves. This is not pride, it's power, power forged in sleepless nights, in therapists' offices, in long walks home after one-sided goodbyes, power built in the unseen, uncelebrated moments where they almost gave in, but didn't. So if that kind of strength resonates with you, type this into the comments. My silence builds empires. Not for likes, but for legacy. Let it be your declaration that your waiting is not weakness, it's wisdom in motion. And as for what's next, these women may appear to stand alone, but they're never truly without support. There's a force they tap into, something Napoleon Hill calls the mastermind. A circle of energy, intention, and influence that surrounds them, even in solitude. Get ready, because the next chapter reveals the secret behind that unseen power. Number 5. Auto-suggestion and the reinvention of self. Imagine a woman standing in front of a mirror, not fixing her makeup, not adjusting her outfit, but looking deeper, past the eyes, past the smile, into the silence behind it all. At first, she sees what the world taught her to see: flaws, mistakes, comparisons. She hears old voices in her head: too emotional, too intense, not enough. But then something shifts. She doesn't walk away from the mirror. She stays. And this time, she decides to rewrite what she sees. This is what these women do, not just once, but every single day. They've had years of being told who to be, to smile more, to need less, to settle, to stay quiet. And after enough heartbreak, gaslighting, and emotional abandonment, they began to internalize it. For a while, they believed it, believed they were hard to love, that maybe they asked for too much, that maybe something in them was broken. But then came the moment, the quiet, private moment, where they chose not to believe the lie anymore. Napoleon Hill said, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." These women took that truth seriously. Alone in their solitude, they began the hardest journey of all, the reinvention of self. No one saw the early days, the trembling hand writing affirmations that didn't feel real yet, the journaling sessions with tear-streaked pages, the awkward self-talk in the mirror that felt fake at first. But day by day, thought by thought, belief by belief, they started to reprogram what had been planted by pain. They stopped asking, "Am I enough?" and started declaring, "I am the prize." They no longer viewed solitude as evidence of being unlovable. It became the evidence that they loved themselves too much to settle. Auto-suggestion isn't about pretending, it's about retraining. These women didn't chant affirmations hoping for a fairy tale. They said them as a new contract with themselves. No longer would they water down their truth to be chosen. No longer would they bend into shapes for people who lacked vision. And so they rewrote their identity. Not based on rejection, but on revelation. They began to believe, truly believe, that their standards weren't too high. They were just finally in alignment with their self-worth. Napoleon Hill knew this when he taught that belief is the gateway to reality. These women began believing that they didn't need to earn love through suffering, that they could be desired and respected, held and free, seen and safe. Their solitude became their lab, a sacred space where they practiced being, not performing. They cultivated inner language that built them up instead of breaking them down. And now, the woman who once begged for crumbs knows she was the whole table all along. So if this part of the journey resonates, if you've ever looked in the mirror and felt the war between who you were told to be and who you truly are, comment this below. I am the prize. Let it ring out like a spell, like a banner, like a new beginning. And what's coming next? Get ready. These women, though alone, are not isolated. They've built something powerful through aligned connection, what Napoleon Hill calls the mastermind. And in the next chapter, we'll uncover how even a woman in solitude is never without her circle, because her frequency attracts a force stronger than luck: intention. Number 6. Building her own mastermind, even in solitude. Imagine a woman walking through a forest alone, but if you looked closer, you'd see she's not truly alone. In her earbuds, a podcast is feeding her vision. In her bag, a book by a brilliant mind she calls a mentor. Her thoughts echo the teachings of those who walked before her: philosophers, spiritual leaders, artists, and entrepreneurs. Around her are no faces but a force field of ideas, energy, and purpose. That's her mastermind. Napoleon Hill said it simply: no individual has ever achieved success without the help of others. And while the world may see these women as solitary, What they've actually done is build a circle of influence so intentional it becomes sacred. Yes, she may go to bed alone, but her thoughts sleep beside greatness because she's lived the other side. The side where she felt completely alone, even with someone lying next to her. The kind of isolation where you feel unseen in a relationship that looks perfect from the outside. The heartbreak of having to carry your dreams in silence because the person beside you couldn't or wouldn't understand them. So now she chooses her circle differently. She builds it through audiobooks that remind her of her worth, through online courses that stretch her capacity, through friendships, even digital ones, rooted in growth, not gossip. She listens to Napoleon Hill, she listens to Maya Angelou, she watches interviews with Oprah, reads Toni Morrison, studies the mindset of innovators. And slowly, those voices become her counsel. This is her mastermind, not a group chat full of complaints, but a mental alliance of brilliance. Hill taught that when two or more minds align with a definite purpose, they create a third mind, a powerful, energetic presence that moves beyond logic. These women don't wait for this to happen by chance. They curate it, with intention, with soul. She may have lost partners, she may have walked away from family patterns that never supported her. But she didn't retreat, she rebuilt. And this time, she made sure that every voice around her was one that fed her future, not her fear. She surrounds herself with people who hold her higher. And when those people aren't physically near, she taps into their energy through words, through memory, through the simple act of choosing not to let her thoughts be dictated by loneliness, but by legacy. And if she hasn't yet found her soul-aligned tribe, she becomes her own mastermind. She journals, she visualizes, she speaks aloud the woman she's becoming as if she's already here, because in her mind, she is. This isn't delusion. This is design. So if this speaks to your path, and you're crafting your life with intention, even while walking alone, type this in the comments. I walk with giants, because you do. With every book, every mentor, every voice that speaks to your highest self, you are never truly alone. And what's next? Oh, now it gets even richer. These women have built their mental empire. But emotional wealth is the foundation beneath it all. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens when a woman discovers that the first form of real wealth is not in her bank, but in her being. You don't want to miss it. Number 7, emotional wealth is the first wealth. Imagine a woman with a heart like a vault, quiet from the outside, but inside it holds treasures no one can see. Not gold, not diamonds, but something far more rare. Emotional wealth. She didn't get it easily. She paid for it. With heartbreak, with trust betrayed, with nights spent over-analyzing why someone's love always came with conditions. She has cried in bathrooms during dinner parties. She has smiled while swallowing pain because someone told her she was too sensitive. She's loved deeply and received silence in return. But instead of going numb, she went inward. Napoleon Hill said that the man who does more than he is paid for will soon be paid for more than he does. These women, they have done the emotional work no one paid them for. They've held space for partners who never held them. They've carried emotional burdens, healed generational wounds, mothered men who called it connection. They've invested their love, their loyalty, their softness into people who didn't have the capacity to receive it. And now, they are overqualified for shallow love. They've already paid the price for wisdom. That investment doesn't come back in the form of money first. It comes back as clarity, peace, boundaries that don't bend. This is emotional wealth. And it's the first form of success that really matters, Because a woman can have a career, a condo, a full passport, but if she's emotionally bankrupt, it shows. In her eyes, in the way she accepts less, in the way she negotiates with loneliness, like it's something to survive. But these women know. They've built the kind of richness that radiates. They walk into a room and their peace shifts the air, not because they're flashy, but because they're full of self-trust, full of emotional self-respect, full of the kind of joy that isn't performative, it's earned. They've learned how to soothe themselves without running to someone else's arms, how to sit with their discomfort instead of outsourcing their healing, how to choose people who match their energy instead of pleading to be chosen. And when people say she's intimidating, what they really mean is she cannot be manipulated. Because emotional wealth is protective, it keeps her from falling for chemistry that lacks character. It shields her from flattery when it's not backed by consistency. It whispers to her, "You've already cried enough for love, now it must rise to meet you." She may not be everyone's idea of easy, but she's finally easy for herself. That's the kind of luxury no brand can sell. So if you feel this in your bones, if you've earned your peace the hard way, type this into the comments. Rich in spirit. Because when you're rich emotionally, everything else aligns in time, love, purpose, wealth, and joy. And just when it seems like her journey couldn't go any deeper, it does. Because in the final chapter, we reveal the most powerful transformation of all. How this woman, complete within herself, no longer waits to be chosen, she chooses. She becomes the chooser, the author, the force. Get ready. The revolution ends where it always should, with soul-level sovereignty. Number 8. She's not alone, she's in alignment. Imagine a tuning fork, silent, still, until it meets the exact frequency it was built to resonate with. No struggle, no force, just a perfect, effortless hum of recognition. That is how alignment feels, and that is what these women have chosen. Not noise, not chaos, but clarity. She walks alone, yes, but not in absence, in integrity, in deep, soul-aligned presence. Napoleon Hill said, "When you are able to maintain your own highest standards of integrity, regardless of what others may do, you are destined for greatness." And these women? They are the embodiment of that quiet greatness, not because they've never wanted love, but because they've stopped chasing versions of it that made them betray themselves. She used to bend, she used to chase, she used to silence her intuition just to keep someone close, but not anymore, because she finally understood love is not love if it costs you your peace. Her solitude is not some lonely exile, it's a choice, a sacred space. A vow she made to herself the day she realized her soul was not something to be bargained with. She is no longer available for the kind of connection that disrupts her alignment, that drags her into patterns she's already healed from, or dims the fire she fought so hard to reignite. She isn't waiting for a partner, she's holding space for the right one. Someone who reflects her peace, not rattles it. Someone who matches her growth, not competes with it. Someone who arrives as a co-creator, not a distraction. And if that person never arrives, she still wins, because the love she found inside herself is non-negotiable. She dances alone now, not because she doesn't crave closeness, but because she refuses to sacrifice her rhythm for someone who can't keep the beat. Her silence speaks, her standards protect, her presence commands. The world may say she's too much. But these women finally realize what that really means. Too whole to control, too clear to confuse, too grounded to shake. She no longer shrinks herself to be palatable. She no longer tolerates half effort. She no longer entertains what doesn't feel like truth. Because she is not alone, she is in alignment, and alignment is her superpower. Napoleon Hill's promise wasn't about romantic success, it was about destiny. And when a woman reaches this level of emotional and energetic integrity, the world around her adjusts. Not because she demanded it, but because her very presence becomes a boundary, a standard, a beacon. If you feel this chapter in your chest, if you know you're not just alone, but in divine alignment, type it loud in the comments, aligned and unshaken. Let it echo to the woman you used to be and the world you're creating next. Because this isn't an ending, it's a new era. The era of the woman who doesn't just seek love, but lives it. Who doesn't wait to be chosen because she chooses herself every single day. And the love that meets her now, it won't save her, it will celebrate her. Because she's not asking to be rescued, she's already free. Press the like button and subscribe, as this journey has way more to discover, and I will see you in the next video.